So the big thing that I want you guys to kind of take out of this, along with the hands-on stuff, is how can you utilize verbiage to connect the message with the individuals you're working with. That's the biggest part that a lot of times we tend to kind of more or less, have a little bit more trouble with when we're trying to communicate with our clients. So what I want to focus on with the lower cross syndrome is using a kind of kooky analogy that I like to kind of rephrase, right? Think of yourself as a person that is pairing wines with, what do they pair wines with? Cheese, right? And chocolate, right? What's that? Meat. Crackers, right? So it's just like you pair different kinds of wines with different kind of other, points that you can actually make the wine taste better, or make the cheese taste better, or make the crackers taste better, whatever, right? But as you know, when you're doing that, different people's palates take different wines differently. Different people's tastes take it differently. So the stuff that I'll be teaching you guys is not the end all be all. It may work for others. It may work for others. It may not work for others. But it really depends as to like how you're going to make the call as to what palate this person has. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to basically kind of start out by doing a squat pattern. So I have my man Felix come here because he's probably the most mobile guy here. My man Ninja, right? But what I want to do is I want to basically kind of I want to demo what a bad squat looks like by forcing him to do a bad squat by giving him a wall to basically not go into a good squat. Okay. And what I mean by that is if you position yourself in the squat position here, okay, just like that. Okay. So normal cues for a squat are drive the knees east and west or outward, right? Keep yourself upright, tall and tight, okay? And to an extent, you do want the knees to be tracking a little bit over the toe, because that's going to let you know that you have good ankle mobility, right? So if I was to restrict his squat pattern by creating a wall around the shin, so let's have you just basically face forward and then just reach into a forward position. So basically, if he reaches forward as much as he can, without actually tilting forward, what is he doing? By reaching forward and not falling forward. Because usually if I give him the key of just reaching as far forward as he can, he's going to want to cave in, right? So I'm going to give him a verbiage of basically being trapped in two walls. There's a wall in front of him, there's a wall behind him. So if there's a wall in front of him, there's a wall behind him, he can't pass that, and it gives him a visual cue of what my expectations are, right? But if I have him reach as far as he can, while maintaining himself within those two walls, what's happening here is he's going to basically hug his shoulder blades up against his rib cage, right? If I was to give him a modality like a weight or something like that, it would make him basically stabilize this before we actually go to a squat, okay? So I want you to just basically give me a demo of like five squats here. Just 5 squats, just going to squat pattern, right? So Felix is probably one of the most mobile guys I've met, right? He has outstanding mechanics. There's a reason why I'm using him, right? So if you notice that his ankle he's got good range of motion, his heels are not coming off the ground. His knees are coming a little bit over the toe. So some rules of thought basically state that don't put your knee over the toe, right? But that's old school, right? So we're going to look at new school. New school is if you do have good ankle mobility, when you are tapping into the ribs, you are going to have a little bit of traction over the toe to an extent, right? So what I'm going to do here is if I send the PVC pipe, go to the squat. So if I set a PVC pipe, if I set a PVC pipe on this side here, and I make it a point to let him know I do not want you to move this PVC pipe. I want you to squat normally, okay? And you can do everything exactly the same on the left side, but if you hit the PVC pipe, you have to create a shift, meaning change your position to go into a squat, right? You're still gonna go as deep as you were, but you have a wall here now. And what that's going to represent is if he hits that PVC pipe, that lets us know that he's having ankle immobility. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. So I got the PVC pipe. Go ahead and go to your squat pattern. Now I want you guys to observe his mechanics. Is there any shifting that takes place in the squat?
So when it starts to both sides being even, like I should be shifting right away.
You should be shifting, but now that the PVC pipe is here, you probably will.
Okay.
So your goal is to basically go as deep as you did, but don't hit that PVC pipe. Right? Go back up. So if it involves twisting, twist with it. Okay. So we're basically mirroring what a bad mechanic is. So go back into it. So what would you be looking at as a bad client? So if you look at his hips, right? He's shifting his weight to the left side a little bit. Go back up. Keep it going. So looking at the profile. So you guys verbalize. What are you noticing here?
Buckling too much forward.
A bit too much forward, right? Okay. Is there any shifting taking place in this weight distribution here?
Yeah, it's on his hips.
It's on his hip. So is he shifting one direction more than the other?
Yeah.
He's shifting to the left, right? So what's happening here is Felix is experiencing what lack of quote-unquote ankle mobility would be like, right? So that's seeing the problem. Well, now let's talk about the solution. As trainers, we want to always be looking at what's the issue and how we can address that with a solution to make that movement better, right? So there's a lot of joints on the actual foot and ankle itself. So usually an area of opportunity is your malleolus, lateral medial malleolus, right? And they sit right on top of what bone? So sit on top of your talus, right? So let's say your talus is like here, right? Medial and lateral malleolus sit around it, right? So if it's not the end all be all, right? But sometimes that's a restricted area, okay? So you want to talk about basically kind of mobilizing that section there, right? So if I look at his foot here, right? Medial malleolus, lateral malleolus, the bone that these two sections sit up on, you know, his tibia is going to sit on it as well. So tibia sits on top of the talus, right? And if this area is restricted, his range of motion is going to be decreased, right? So this is in this example, that could be the issue. Once again, it's not the end-all be-all, but it's a potential solution that we may have, okay? So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna do a simple technique called joint flossing, okay? And what he's gonna do is he's gonna basically grab this band and set it on a lower surface, lower attachment, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this box and I'm going to position it in a setup where I have a higher step, okay? So that higher step is going to basically create tension in what direction? If I was to wrap the band around my ankle. Back and down, right? So if I take the band and set it right around the anterior portion of my foot, right? If the person has a shoe where they actually have the trunk of the shoe sticking out, that's a good place to set it because it can make it more comfortable on it, because now you're adding tension on it. So this band is probably about an inch and a half, okay? So a band around this width tends to have about 120 pounds of pressure, okay? So if I want to have good tension on it, I set forward. So now there's tension going down and back on them, okay? So if I look at the little demo that I had a second ago, right? The tibia sits on top of the talus and the medial and lateral malleolus, right? So what's happening is that band is basically creating tension back, right? So if it's creating tension back, and I start basically maneuvering my foot or my knee over the position where it should be. So if I sit back into my back hip, I'm more or less going to maneuver my knee to the outside, inside, or middle, and then inside, okay? So I'm exploring different corners of the ankle from that position there, okay? So more often than not, for the lower cross syndrome, we will spend time on the hips, internal and external rotation, and we tend to forget about how important probably one of the most important parts is, and that's the main area that's making contact with the ground, right? So if I do that and explore those corners, and if I had that restriction that was taking place, let's go back into that demo for a second. So let's say, for example, even though this is a pseudo demo, let's say he just did the releasing point. The first portion was he was doing a squat pattern, right? And he had this set up here, so go back into the original bad section. So as he comes down, he's going to be twisting, right? Okay? If I came back and I released and I emphasized on correcting that setup, there should be hopefully at least a little bit of a difference. So let's say that the mobility decreased or increased a little bit more, I would be setting the TBC back a little bit further just to imitate that, right? So come back into it. And if I see a subtle shift where you may not be twisting as much, we're making a good change in the right direction, okay? So because you do this in one interaction, you're not gonna get a full end result in one setting, okay? Once again, you're playing against a person that's been doing their own movement patterns on a daily basis for multiple hours, and then 1 hour of corrective is not gonna change everything. But if you're able to basically see the change, that's a big plus, okay? So one thing too is if you create a movement pattern shift, it's always good to appreciate the pre and post change. Meaning that if I do a test and retest, so I have him do a set of squats, maybe I'll grab my phone and I'll basically videotape this movement pattern, address it, come back and retape it again, see if we created a change. And if you created that change, that once again is creating value because now they see what you see. So what you see is one thing and what they see is another. If you say it, they don't trust it. If they see it and believe it, if they see it themselves, they believe it. Okay? So that's addressing the ankles, right? Questions on that?
So with the knee going over the toe, it's okay for it to go about to like where the toe is or past the toe.
It depends on the person, right? If somebody has longer tibias, they're probably going to have a little bit more of a distance. But I'm also looking at the hips. How far back do those hips go? So with if you look at the mechanics with Felix, he's a great example to use it for. So go to your standard squat here. As he goes into the squat, the knees are a little bit past the toes, right? So you would think, oh my gosh, that's a bad pattern, right? But if I look at his hips are way back. So because his hips are so far back, the distribution of the weight is being centered mostly around this area here, right? If he was to come back up, so come back up, and then go into a squat, but shift more forward and listen to your hips. Now that would not be a good thing, right? Because he's not accessing his hips. There's a big difference. So if he comes back and actually sits into a sit like he did a second ago, give him a more east and west approach, now he's truly accessing the hips from that position. Okay? So we're still looking at that line, right? So if I was to draw a line here, so go to stand up real quick and go back down again. If I was to draw a line, his weight distribution is somewhat same. See that? Right? If you shift it forward, now it's mostly towards the squats, and his knees are receiving more of that tension. We don't want that, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. If it goes too far forward, you see that line, then have to go back and walk it.
Yeah.
But if the line's still there, then it's good.
Yeah. Mine's still in, then you're still good to go. You can also basically kind of gauge it by the depth of the thighs, right? So in most scenarios, for this specific portion here, a good depth is probably about 5 risers. If somebody has bad mobility or bad squat mechanics, I may put them at either 6 risers or 7 risers, right? If it's somebody that's about my height or Felix's height, a good depth, good rule of thumb is probably about 5 risers. Okay, squatting and okay, so this would be a pretty good depth. Any lower than that, now you're really like you're tapping into like more mobility. Cool. All right. So let's talk about internal and external rotation, right? So if I want to look at getting somebody to do a proper squat, so a proper squat, you should have good east and west approach. Tapping into those hips, right? Just like Felix was doing, right? More often than not, a lot of times we tend to lack that external rotation, that position there, right? So what I can do is I can grab either a band like this or perhaps a lighter band and appreciate that external rotation by letting them actually sit down and have that natural tension with the band. So the band's actually going to assist them in that range of motion. No hip issues, right? Mike? Just a little tight. Beautiful. Hop on over here, brother. So let's have my man Mike hop on up here. Give me a set of just 3 or 4 air squats. Right? Yeah, hands out. Just give me a couple of, just like a baseline here. So he's doing a squat. He's accustomed to having his knees straight forward, right? So I want you to give me some external rotation. So when you plant your foot, fade east and west of it. Fade that portion of your setup and drive those feet east and west. So he's not too bad. He's pretty good, right? But you're also pretty tall, so taller guys seem to have a little bit more tension in the hips, right? So my man Mike is gonna sit here. We're gonna sit facing this direction. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna grab this band and I'm gonna set it around his low back, okay? Now, I'm gonna have him lace both of his thumbs on the band here. He's gonna hold on to it. So this is stuff that I want you guys to practice on your own before you start practicing with your clients, right? So this is gonna be capitalizing on the external rotation of the hip. So what he's gonna do here, he's gonna hold on to it. Wrap this band around his knee. Wrap this band around the other knee. So, okay? Now the main thing on this here is he's gonna basically, he feels a lot of tension, right? So the tension is basically doing what? It's pulling his femur into its socket, the acetabular. Pretty good tension, right? Now, what he's gonna focus on here, you feel any tension as you do that? Did you hold that there? Okay. I'm gonna take it to the next level, okay? So what he's gonna do is he's gonna cross his right leg over his left thigh. Cross that baby up. Oh, cash money. So from that position there, you can see how he automatically tries to curl in here. So if he tries to curl up here, that's not what I want to do, because that's his way of compensating for it, right? So I'm going to turn on my stopwatch for a good minute, okay? It's a good baseline to start him off with. So you can see that his knee's really up. He's kind of curling forward because he wants to fight that tension. So you're going to basically resist the temptation of tilting forward like that, Mike. So I want you to set your hand on the inside of your leg here. I want you to sit up tall, and I'm going to show you what you're going to do. You're basically in this position right now. You're going to sit up tall. Sit up tall. Sit your hand here. Take a big breath in here, and you're going to exhale as you sit forward, but you're not slouching. So sit up tall, sit forward, keep that upright position, and then let that thigh push that knee out a little. Okay? And then come back in, and then exhale as you do that. So what he's feeling right now is an immense amount of external rotation, right? He's working against what he's accustomed to. So a lot of times our body will do what it wants to do, which is, this is easier than this, right? So you're fighting the temptation of doing internal rotation, okay? So keeping that going, we're gonna do that for a full minute, which is right about now. Keep it off. He's gonna do the same thing for the other side, just so that way I don't send him run around in circles after this, right? So you can see right away, as soon as he puts that leg up, he curls up. So me as his coach / trainer, I'm gonna make it a point to teaching him to sit up nice and tall, right? So the cue here, once again, is stay standard, tall and tight. I'm gonna tuck my chin in a little bit, I'm gonna pull it back towards my spine, and I'm gonna think about sitting up nice and tall from that position there, okay? Hands on the inside, he's gonna take a big breath in here, and then exhale as he basically sits forward and keeps that upright position. Cool? He's gonna keep on doing that sequence. So that sequence is tension, release, tension, release. Big breath in, and then exhale as he sits forward. So that is by design. That breathing mechanic is by design. Release will happen when you exhale, not when you're holding your breath, right? So keeping that going. And every time he sits forward or tilts forward, he's gonna create a little bit more tension on that knee out, right? And what we'll do here is after he does this for a full minute, we're gonna go back into our squat to see if there's any change at all, okay? So he's gonna come back up here now. So go ahead and take that band off. And then take that bad boy all the way off. So just kind of, what I want you to do, Mike, I just want you to walk to the end of the water fountain and back real quick. And just kind of see if you feel any difference in the way you move. Can you appreciate any difference? Can you sense that you maybe a little bit more freed? If you are, cool. If not, then we'll look a little further, right? Subtle difference, a little weird? Okay. So from here, let's have you go back into our squat here real quick, right? And I'll have you give me the general feedback on this. So first and foremost, stand up real quick. Let's have your feet on the inside of your armpit. So sit up tall. So eyes forward. And I want you to keep the same mechanic. You sit up nice and tall. Set your hands forward. I want you to reach as far as you can. Okay. Now, east and west for the thighs, corkscrew. Good. Now pull yourself into the squat as you make those knees go east and west. East and west, east and west. So give me about 5 reps of that. So hopefully he's able to access his hips a little bit. What did you notice?
My hip sensing was really well.
Okay, so it's an unnatural movement for you to think of east and west into a squat, right? Because you're accustomed to probably doing shins straight forward towards your toes, right? Cool. So the idea of that is you want to do basically a releasing tactic into the external rotator to the hip, right? So with him, it's yes, we're accessing better hip motion, but at the same time, we're also accessing a better understanding of how his mechanics should be working, right? So it's twofold in this example, okay? So that's looking at the hip complex as an example. So I'm going to use you as my example for the next phase, right? So we're going to take this box, I'm going to take that block, I'm going to take a 25-pound plate over to the other side of the room, right? And I'll have you take this box for me. Have a block and then grab the band as well. So let's sneak on over next door here. About 6'2". Tall dudes need a little bit more height in the beginning of this pattern, right? Regardless, you want to start out with higher position here because this is going to put him in a very exposed position that he's probably not accustomed to. And what he's going to do here is he's going to take this band, once again, wrap it around, okay? Right around that lower back, right over where that belt piece goes, okay? And he's going to sit down onto the blocks. He's going to sit up nice and tall. Now this here, let me hand it to me real quick. This here is going to be set up in a position where I can set my feet fairly snug up against the 25-pound plate here, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to keep me accountable. So I'm going to change whatever rule of thought that I just put out there as far as east and west, toes out, okay? Because that's for the actual squat. This is a releasing tactic, right? So I'm going to set my feet hugging the actual plate because I'm going to basically create good ankle mobility as I'm going through this action. If I go here, I'm cheating. That make sense? So if I set my toes forward, I'm going to wrap these bands around my thighs and I'm going to sit up tall. So I want my hips to be up against the wall here, okay? And what you're going to do here, Mike, you're going to sit up nice and tall. Drive those knees out while keeping contact with the ground. Make sense? And I'm picking on you just because these guys know how I work. You don't.
That's fun.
All right. So let's have you set this. So have you stand up real quick, and have you wrap this around your belt area here, and then set your thumbs around the setup there. Okay. So I want the band to be a little bit lower, right around your top of the bench. There. Okay. So hold on to that. So I'm not going to have him put it on. I'm going to put it on for him because if he tries to put it on from that position, it's a lot of stress on his shoulder. So I got to be careful of that. Okay. So hold on to the other side. Wrap this guy here. Okay. And I'm going to wrap this guy here. Just like that. Okay. Now, from here, my main thing is I got to make sure that he's not feeling too much stress on the hips. But if he's not feeling enough stress, I gotta remove one of those blocks. So talk to me. How much stress do you feel on the hips? Not too much, right? He's like, I open you up pretty good over there, right? So let's have you kick off one of those blocks here real quick. Good. Now sit a little bit lower. Now we're talking some biz, huh?
Yeah.
Good. Now from that position there, let's have you set your elbows on the inside. Okay. Now sit up tall. Push the T-spine up against the wall. So 3 points of contact, just like in the FMS. Okay. Hips, T-spine, upper head, okay, up against the wall. So you take a big breath in here, and I want you to exhale as you drive those knees out every time you exhale. Good. Take a big breath in, and then exhale as you drive those knees out. Perfect. Now, you're doing pretty solid. So I'm gonna have him do this for probably about 30 seconds or so before I transition into the next step, okay? And the next step will be, if he can get his heels closer to the wall, we'll do that. So first and foremost, I want to establish some good shift, some good release before I go further. If I go too far too soon, then I'm stressing the tissue more than I should. That make sense? How you feeling there, big guy?
Two.
Good. So see if you can grab your heels and pull them closer to the wall here for me. And if you can, just a half an inch, that's fine. Right? You can see how his toes automatically want to come out. So I'll grab this guy here, and I'm just going to assist him in position. So I want those knees going east and west here. So set the elbows on the inside, right on the inside. Big breath in, and exhale. Just like that. Nice. Big breath in. Feeling that? Talk to me. What do you feel, big dog?
I feel more of my groins and my hips.
Yeah. So we're getting the inside now, right? So earlier, so if you look at the untrained eye says, oh, we're getting this. No. Earlier on the step, we were getting the external rotators. Now we're getting the groin, right? Now we're getting the groin. So usually on a squat, you do a squat pattern, and the glutes are made to create external rotation, right? But the lower you go into the squat, the muscle fibers actually change position. So wherever the muscle fibers change direction to, that's the direction that they're going to start to pull to. Okay? So at the bottom of the squat, the external rotators become internal rotators. If I'm doing this, fibers are facing out, I go down into the squat, fibers are changing, and then you notice people when they're coming up, they do this. It's because the mechanics of the glute just changed. Okay? So go ahead and come on off there. So take the band off. So a lot of it is, yes, I want to create some mechanic, or not mechanic changes, but just basically the releasing tactics accentuate what you should be doing with your own body, right? So we're basically more or less trying to reprogram the way you should be functioning. How do you feel, brother? All right. So give me a couple steps that direction, to the end of the hallway, and then walk it back. And the reason why I'm having him do this is because I wanted to reestablish the accessing of his tissue again, right? If he's not walking around and feeling it out, and I haven't gone to a squat right away, he hasn't gone back to his normal setup. Okay. How do you feel, Leo? Okay. So let's go back into your squat pattern here. The same verbiage that I utilized a second ago, which was what, guys?
Drive your knees
Alright, so the inside of his foot is going to be in the inside of his armpit. So feet a little wider, slightly. Okay. Okay. Now from here he's going to have his arms forward. There's a wall here, and there's a wall here. Right? He's going to get a breath in. He's going to reach as far as he can. Reach. Good. Corkscrew set up at the thighs. Okay. And then pull yourself into the squat as you let those knees go east and west. East and west. Okay. So give me about 5 reps back there, Mike. Keep your eyes forward. Don't tilt forward. Keep yourself as upright as you can. So tall and tight. Good. So right now I'm not looking to kind of create any changes as far as like butt links or anything like that because he's not loaded. Right? So if his pelvis tilts down a little bit, it's okay right now because he is not loaded. Right? Main thing is I want to make sure that he's actually accessing more of his hips this time. So what do you feel there? Feel a difference? What are you noticing as a person that's noticing the change?
Activating my hips more now with free motion. I'm activating them. I can tell if the piece will start using a lot more grip too.
Cool. All right. So he's accessing more. He feels the difference, right? So that would be some banded techniques that we can utilize for opening up the closed door. So I call them closed doors because if you're tight and you're not able to actually access the proper range of motion, then why should you be knocking on a closed door if it's not open, right? So if he's coming down to a squat and he looked a lot like how Felix looked like a second ago when I put the PVC pipe in front of his shin, then he probably has tight ankles. So I should probably address that before I put on 225 on the back squat, right? So let's switch modalities and go into using some kettlebell work and some viper work. So let's go back over to that open approach. I love using this as a modality in between my sets, right? So think of it as, once again, we talked about the fact that the upper body and lower body mirror each other. Okay? So if I really hunch forward, is it just going to be upstairs? Or is the lower body going to mirror that too? So if I really hunch forward, my pelvis is probably going to tilt underneath me too. Right? If I overextend, I'm probably going to do the same thing as well, right? So in a sense, they both kind of like function and mirror each other. Okay? So the idea with this is I'm going to use a kettlebell in such a way where I'm more or less counteracting the temptation of doing this. Okay? So I'm going to grab a kettlebell. I'm going to grab it from the top of the ears here. In this version, I'm having both toes facing straight forward. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the kettlebell, top of the ears, pop it up, grab onto the side, keep the elbows in, and from that position, I'm going to set the elbows on top of my thighs. That's going to be my focal point. Don't get confused with taking the elbows off of the thigh, because if you take the elbows off of the thigh, that tension is going to be going towards your lower back. Okay? This is the way it looks like. Position, pop it up, keep it close to my body. I'm going to keep my chin towards my spine to the best of my ability, and I'm going to sit back to my hips. Okay? Now, I'm going to try to keep those toes as forward as I can the whole time. Okay? I'm going to take a breath in, and I'm going to exhale as I fight the temptation of curling forward. And I'm going to basically mirror my knees and my elbows together simultaneously. So I'm extending both of those simultaneously. Okay? I'm going to sit back into the hips again. Keep those shoulders back. Extend. So the temptation I'm trying to fight is this. If I'm here, as I extend, I'm going to start to try to do this. Okay? I'm going to fight that by doing this simultaneously. So the beauty of that is you're accessing a lot of hamstrings, a lot of T-spine. Okay? And the idea with this, the reason why I have both of my toes facing forward is because I want to access all three heads of my hamstring. If I go too far out, I'm going to get just the medial hamstrings. If I go too far in, which is obviously unnatural, nobody's going to be doing that, right? You get the outside. So if I have both toes facing forward, all that tension is primarily set towards my hamstrings. All three heads. Okay? Pop it up. Hips. Breath in. Exhale. Find the hamstrings. Keep the chin towards the spine. And go back in. So a good rule of thumb is basically tap into about 6 to 8 reps of that. Okay? 6 to 8 reps is plenty. Okay? So let's put this into practice real quick. 16 kilos is good for most guys, strong ladies too. About 14 to 12 kilos starting out. For the ladies, it's probably about right. Okay? So grab a kettlebell. Boys, grab a 16 kilo if you can. I want you guys practice. Lower cross syndrome. The beauty of this is that you're accessing both the upper and lower. It's not just the upper or the lower. You're getting both. 2 for 1, right? Alright, so let's go through the pattern here. Everybody grab onto the top of the ears real quick. So when you grab the kettlebell, make sure that the kettlebell, if you set it right in the middle of the X marks the spot. I want your medial malleolus to be right on the same alignment as the handle itself. What I like about that is you're actually accessing a good hinge from that position there. Okay? So find a good hinge, get the hips, pop it up, grab onto it. Okay? Pop it up, grab onto it. Now keep it nice and tight. Okay? So once again, the verbiage still stays. Tall and tight, chin towards the spine. Okay? Elbows are going to be on the mid portion of your thighs. So sit back into the hips. Now from here, you're going to take a breath in, and you're going to exhale as you fight the sensation of falling forward or letting your back curve. So straighten out the elbows and the knees simultaneously. You're going to feel a lot of hamstrings taken to the picture. Okay? Come back into it. Good. So keep it. When you bring it back in towards your body, make sure you keep it up against your chest. Okay? Up against your chest. That's your resting point. Get a breath in, and then exhale as you drive the hips up. Find the hamstrings from that position there. Good. Give me about 6 reps of that. Nice. And all of you guys seem like you have a pretty solid form on this. Jamie, let's have your feet a little closer for me. Okay. Oh, yes. So if you have time, so go to set. So once you're done, set the weight down in the bottom phase. Okay. So don't make the mistake of standing up from that bottom position. Why is that? So if I grab the weight and I keep the weight going, if I'm still holding on to the weight and I stand up from there, why is that a bad idea? Because you've been working on releasing. Right? So the whole purpose of this is releasing. So if you're focusing on releasing and you're in a relaxed state, and you decide to stand up, you could potentially tweak something doing that. So safety first, right? Set the weight down and then repeat that sequence again, right? Now, following that, let's say we go into adding some adductors to the picture, right? So if I want to add adductors to the picture, I'm just going to change the pattern. Still going to be picking it up the same. Boom. Keep it close. Sit back into the hips. Now from here, I'm going to bring the elbows to the inside. And I'm going to drive those knees out. Okay? So if I'm driving those knees out, what do you guys think I'm tapping into? External rotators. I'm also tapping into the groin, right? And another thing we're not thinking about is the ankles. Now I'm tapping into ankle mobility work too. So I could sway back and forth, keeping that upright position. I could pivot, okay? And then just switch over between those two versions for a good time. And this will be for time, for about 20 or 30 seconds or so. Once you're done, set the weight down. Especially in this one here, set the weight down before you come up, okay? Because once again, now here, you're in a position where you're more or less exposed if you decide to come up in that lower position, okay? So once again, I'm coming down, elbows in the thighs like you did in the beginning, transition to the inside, drive those knees out, keep this close. So no matter what, as much as you're tempted to basically tilt forward, you're gonna fight that by driving those shoulders back. Let's give that a try. So popping it up, nothing changes as far as the pattern itself. You will notice that your toes will probably come out a little bit more in this version though, okay? So bring those hips all the way back, elbows on the thighs. Once you're there, drive those knees out. And I'm gonna have you guys basically go side to side first. Go side to side first. Play around with that. Keep the heels in contact with the ground as much as you can. Okay? Now pause in the center, your base, and then pivot side to side. Yes. Oh, that's money, huh? Yes. And then come back into side to side again. So neutral, and then side to side again. So appreciate that you're tapping into ankle mobility, adductors, and external rotation, and then pivot side to side again. Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Set the weight down. Oh.
I have a question.
Yes.
How low do you want to go in this? All the way down or just in a squat?
What do you mean?
So I basically can stable right here, or I can push myself all the way
Yeah.
down.
So you don't want to collapse like that. So I emphasize on the fact that you don't want to go towards what you're tempted to do, which is this. So the whole point of this, the whole workshop is called what?
The lower cross.
Lower cross syndrome, right? So if I let my pelvis tilt down, then that doesn't even make sense, right? So I want to keep that neutral position as much as I can, right? So do not let your butt wing take over.
Okay.
Right? Cool? Questions on that? So you can cross-reference this. So let's go into kind of do a little bit of flow with this, okay? We go with the first one, all hamstring. So everybody grab onto the kettlebells real quick. Top of the ears, pop it up. Grab onto the side of the ears. Now the elbow's gonna be sitting on the mid portion of your thigh. Sit back into the hips. Elbow stays on the thigh. Get a breath in. Exhale as you drive the hips up. So right now the elbows on the mid portion of your thigh. That's your focal point. Now bring it back again, up against your body. Sit back into the hips, keep it nice and close. Fight the temptation of tilting, right? And then repeat that sequence. Give me about 3 reps of that. Just 3 reps, okay? Once you're done with your 3rd rep, set the weight down. Come back up. Okay? Now set the weight down. We're going to transition right into the adductors. Okay? Down to the top of the kettlebell again. Pop it up. Sit into the hips. Elbows on top of the thigh to begin with. Then transition to the elbows on the inside and drive those knees out. Now go over to side here. Side to side first. Keep contact to the ground with both heels. Pivot now. Easy going. So none of this is fast, guys. You're being methodical with the pattern, not moving fast with it. And then back to side again here. Yeah, keep that rolling. And then back to neutral. And then pivot. Almost there. I'm having you guys do this for 30 seconds. 2, 1, set it down. And then come back up. Okay? Yeah. So whoever said that mobility or releasing work could not be work, right? So I mentioned in the beginning, it's like carrying wine, right? So once again, you're like a mad scientist with your clients. If I'm working on bench press, as an example, there's a lot of this going on, right? Is it a bad idea to tap into this in between that set? No, there's nothing wrong with it. Because bench press is doing this. I'm pressing, right? Well, hopefully for a human, I'm not doing this. The kettlebell work will assist in opening things up to hopefully, perhaps, open the door to provide a better chest press. Does that make sense? No confusion with that, right? If I'm doing deadlifts, I could do a heavy set, and I could deload if I go into a mobility set after that. Or I could do a mobility set, so we're talking about the kettlebell work, an engagement set like a samurai or a D1 pattern, and then into the deadlift after that. Why would I pair it like that? Programming wise. Why would I pair a kettlebell mobility drill with the samurai or the D1 pattern, and then go into the deadlift? Speak louder, speak louder. Good answer. I'm opening up the door. I'm going into a samurai pattern or like a plank engagement or something like that, right? And then I go into a deadlift, right? So once again, if I talk about the fact that I don't want to stand up right away after doing a mobility drill, do I want to go right into a resistance pattern right off the bat? Probably not, because I just released, right? So why not engage and then move into the deadlift? So engage would be like the samurai pattern, which is this pattern, right? I'm engaging things. Then I pair the deadlift. So I'm thinking of, quote unquote, how does this wine pair with this cheese? How does this cracker pair with this other wine? Right? You're not going to pair red wine with white cheese. You're probably going to pair it with some kind of steak, right? It just doesn't make sense. So you have to think about how does this make sense for the person that I'm working with. You can't just throw things into it and expect it to be like a nice, beautiful design. Right? Make sense? So let's look at the Vipers here. You got that little guy there. And you may have seen me work this into my personal programs. Guys, I'm going to say this. Like, this here will change and will give you a nice little pairing of this into your program. Because first and foremost, you're using your own body to pattern, and you're using leverage points with the Viper. Okay? So what I'm going to do with this here is I'm going to basically open the door of the hip / the hamstring complex while tapping into my T-spine mobility simultaneously. Okay? So the pattern looks something like this without the actual Viper itself. I'm going to have both toes facing forward. I'm going to have my Viper here. I'm going to hinge into a deadlift pattern. I'm going to pull up against my body, right? And whatever side that is offset is the side that I'm going to be rotating towards. What is it? Rotation. Okay? I'm in position here. I'm going to extend this knee, and then drive this knee out simultaneously. See that? Is a rotation going on? Is a rotation going on? You got it again. Looks like it, doesn't it? It's not. No rotation. I'm extending the hip. It looks like I'm rotating. I'm keeping this stable. Right? If I rotate from this position here, do you think it's going to be my T-spine rotating or my lower back rotating? Probably lower back. Is your low back made to rotate? Hopefully not. Unless you're an anomaly. Somebody that's really broken and laying down on the ground. Right? So if I'm here, I'm going to extend, straighten out that knee. This opens up this hip. And this knee comes out. Because naturally my temptation of this position here is doing what? Caving in. This feels better than this. Right? So I'm thinking of two different things at the same time. Position, extend, drive the knee out. And what looks like a rotation is just simply my hip opening up. That makes sense? From here, then I'm going to accentuate by reaching through. Now I'm tapping into my T-spine from that position. Bringing it back down, neutral position again. Back up. That's what it looks like without the Viper. So I've got the Viper, and I'm going to offset it. Meaning that one side is longer than the other. So if I'm set up here, I'm in position, both toes are facing forward. I'm going to hinge back, find the hips, shoulders towards my back pocket, keep my chin towards my spine. I'm going to pull that Viper like it's a rope. And what I mean by that is I'm physically making contact with my torso. So that's tapping into my posterior chain. And I'm going to keep that engagement the whole time. The whole time. Okay? Tension, extend, drive the knee out, get a breath in, and exhale as you drive through. Bringing it back, still in contact, back in again. That's the sequence. Hips back into a deadlift pattern, chin towards the spine, pull, keep that engagement, extend, drive the knee out, drive through, boom. Questions on that? I'm physically, you can see the Viper bend, right? So if it's bending, I'm keeping it engaged. Even as I'm extending. So as I'm extending, I'm using my lower hand to push the Viper out. Still keeping in contact. I'm using my upper hand to retract. So now I'm tapping into a lot of complexity into that simple pattern. So what looks like a simple movement pattern, oh, I'm going to go into this movement. No, you need to be thinking about it. Right? Go through the sequence again. Position. So if I'm here, I'm pulling, I'm extending, keeping that dialed in, driving this knee out, and I'm driving through with my bottom hand, and I'm pulling back with my upper hand. Make sense? Bring it back, boom. Back in. Okay? So let's all grab a Viper real quick. We're gonna play around with that. So, hands up front. Whatever side is staggered, that's the side you're rotating. Okay? Hinge back. Find the hamstrings. Keep your chin towards your spine. Do not look up to me. Okay? Pull it tight up against your chest. Okay? You're going to extend the side that you're staggered on as you drive the opposite knee out. So, good. Then drive through. Now make sure that that Viper is touching your chest the whole time. Okay? Now, once you're at the bottom position, stand back up. Okay? And same sequence. We're going to do 3 reps per side. Okay? Just one side for now. Okay? Now drive the hips back again. Pull it back up against your chest. So you're not going to pull the Viper against your chest until you're actually in a full hinge. Okay? So stand back up again. Drive the hips back into a deadlift pattern first. Find that full deadlift. Now once you're there, I want you to pull up against your chest. Full row. Keep that engagement. Extend that same side you're staggered on. Drive the opposite knee out. Look in the direction you're about to push and then drive up. Keep it up against your body. And bring it back in. Back into neutral. Extend the arms out. Make sense? Questions on that? What did we feel? A lot of hammies. Blue. Feel it up there? Talk to me.
As
let's have these guys try it out. One of you guys coach them as you're going through the motions real quick. Okay? So sit up nice and tall. Drive the hips back. Find the knees. So soften the knees there, Felix. Soften the knees even more. There you go, right there. Now pull. Keep it tight. Extend. And then drive through. Look in that direction. Yes. Get that, Mike? So on that one there, you're too parallel to the ground. So what I mean by that, guys, is you don't want to be parallel to the ground like this. You want to have yourself in a deadlift pattern the whole time. Right? It's you're playing around with shearing force right now. And that shearing force is up against your vertebra if you're not doing it right. So if you're extending your knee, you're basically you're allowing your low back to be in a sitting position if you're going to the neck. Because as you reach out with the Viper, now you're playing with a different lever. As you reach through the Viper, you're lengthening out the lever, and that lever becomes that much more challenging on that leg that you're extending it. Make sense? Cool?